So good to have you join us today. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Lee Ji-yoon in Seoul. Coming up on today's Business Daily. With growing debt and slowing growth, is China's economy heading for economic trouble seen already in Japan? We'll sit down with an expert to talk about this. A growing number of men over the age of 40 are spending more on themselves, splurging on clothes, hobbies, and grooming products. These stories and more coming right up. The presidential office of Cheongwade has announced 4 nominees for the new cabinet, all 4 of them current members of the ruling Democratic Party of Korea. It nominated Representative Kim Bu-kyum as the Minister of the Interior. Do Jong-hwan is the Culture Minister nominee. Representative Kim Hyun-mi for the Minister of Land, Infrastructure and Transport, and Kim Young-chun is nominated to be the next Minister of Oceans and Fisheries. Although National Assembly approval is not required, all nominees will undergo parliamentary hearings. The level of non-performing loans, essentially debt unlikely to be paid back to creditors, has fallen to its lowest in 4 years. Now, this is welcome news, but the country's financial watchdog says it's not loosening its reins yet. Our Kim Ji-yeon reports.
In its provisional estimate, the country's watchdog, the Financial Supervisory Service, says the amount of non-performing loans at Korean banks has fallen to around $21.1 billion, just shy of 1.4% of total lending during the January to March period. That's down nearly $7 billion from the same period last year. The watchdog attributes it to the shrinking amount of newly added bad debt, particularly among the country's large companies. The amount of new loans classified as substandard or below during the first 3 months of the year amounted to a combined $3.5 billion, the lowest level since the global financial crisis in 2008. Despite such improvements, the watchdog says it's strengthening its monitoring of the quality of debt incurred by households, which amounts to $1.2 trillion, as well as loans taken on due to restructuring in the country's shipbuilding and shipping industries. Data by the financial watchdog shows the amount of bad debt among households inched up by $89 million during the first quarter compared to the previous quarter. The level of bad debt in the shipbuilding industry stood at more than 11.5% of total lending. Kim Ji-yeon, Business Daily.
The shipbuilding industry, long a mainstay for Korea, has been in a slump for years, but it's finally showing signs of recovery and a rise in demand. The UK-based Clarkson Research says prices for bulk carriers and oil tankers inched up during the 2 months leading to May. The price of a very large crude oil carrier, one of the most popular models sold by Korean shipbuilders, rose by about $500,000 to $8.5 million. This is the first rise in prices in nearly 3 years. The institute projects that the worst may be over and that the shipbuilding sector may be on track for a recovery. 8 coal-fired power plants here in Korea will be temporarily shut down for a full month starting from the 1st of June. Just ahead of this, power producers, along with the Environment Ministry today, put forth a detailed blueprint on when and how the plants will be shut down. All 8 plants have been operating for more than 30 years with a combined capacity of 2.8 gigawatts. From next year, the thermal power plants will be halted regularly for 4 months annually from March to June when energy consumption is relatively low. There are currently 10 old coal-fired power plants in the country, but 2 have been excluded from the plan. In terms of permanent closure, all 10 are expected to go offline before the year 2022, earlier than originally scheduled. And this is expected to help bring down particle pollution by nearly 20% in 5 years compared to 2015 levels. Just last week, global ratings agency Moody's downgraded China's sovereign credit rating. And although the downgrade didn't seem to have much impact on the Chinese financial markets, there are concerns that China's economy may be turning Japanese. Now, why is that concerning? Let's find out.
30 years ago, Japan faced a massive economic bubble in which prices in the real estate and stock markets were overinflated. It was also when the government had flooded its economy with cheap credit in response to falling exports due to a stronger yen and sluggish global growth. That ultimately led to an asset price bubble which popped in 1989, resulting in financial crises from which the country has not yet fully recovered. The Financial Times reported recently that 2017 China is running the risk of repeating the fate of Japan. China's total debt was more than double its gross domestic product in 2015, and it's ballooned to almost 250% as Beijing has repeatedly used cheap credit to stimulate slowing growth. Experts say if China's current bubble bursts, it'll have a detrimental effect on the global economy, considering that the country accounts for 40% of its annual growth. So where is China's economy headed, and will it end up repeating Japan's mistakes?
And to tell us more about this, Professor Yang Jun-seok from the Catholic University of Korea joins us in the studio today. So good to see you.
Happy to be here.
All right, so last week's ratings downgrade on China by Moody's didn't seem to have that much effect on financial markets. So tell us more about what happened since then.
Okay, well, it turns out that the S&P and Fitch so far is not showing any signs of lowering their ratings. And when investors make decisions, they usually take a combination of those three agencies. So because only one agency has lowered its credit rating, I think it does not have that much of an effect. Also, the Chinese domestic investors don't really take account of foreign credit rating agencies' ratings, so that's another reason. And the Chinese economy has been somewhat improving this year. Their exports have been rising, and so the economy is getting better, and I think that's also a part of it. So overall, it's not having too much effect on the financial market, but there are some important players who are very concerned about both the debt levels and the growth in debt. Not only Moody's, but the Bank of International Settlements, BIS, has been warning China that they run a high chance of having a banking crisis within the next 3 years. But the Chinese government seems to be very confident that they can handle it, and I think the investors for now are trusting the Chinese government that they can handle it.
Now, so I think it is fair for us to say that China's economy is not doing as well as before, and we are seeing more reports coming out that China's economy is turning Japanese. Now, what do they mean by this?
Okay, well, during the 1990s, they had the burst in the bubble of the Japanese real estate market. If you go to the sort of the root of the problem, then during the mid-80s, because the United States was having such a large trade deficit, they forced Japan to raise the value of the yen, the Plaza Accord of 1985, and that caused a recession in Japan, which caused the Bank of Japan to lower its interest rate to almost zero levels. So that created an incentive to invest in real estate, and that ended up causing a real estate bubble. And when the real estate bubble burst, the banks got stuck with a lot of lowered value of the collateral, and that was the beginning of their lost 20 years. And part of the effect is still being felt today. And because the growth of the debt is largely driven by investment in the real estate market, some people see similarities between China now and Japan back then.
Then tell us more about China's housing bubble right now.
Okay, well, the Chinese secondary financial institutions seems to be borrowing from the commercial banks of China and then lending that money to people who want to invest in real estate. So in that sense, it does seem to be somewhat similar to, not only to the Japanese bursting of the real estate bubble, but also somewhat like the U.S. subprime problem or the Irish problem during the global financial crisis. Having said that, though, the large increase in debt is driven by the real estate market, but the large amount of debt, the high level of debt, is actually due to the state-owned enterprises of the Chinese government. As they transitioned out of the communist economy to the more market-oriented economy, because a lot of these firms were not very efficient, but they wanted to keep the employment because they didn't want to disrupt the economy, these SOEs have a large level of debt, and this problem has been recognized for about 20, 30 years. They have been mentioning this problem since the early 90s. So there has been a lot of promise by the Xi Jinping administration when it came in that they were going to deal with this through reforms, but they haven't really done it yet.
Okay.
So I think Moody's was giving them a warning that they'll have to deal with this debt sooner or later.
Now, but just like Japan, China is a shrinking economy as well as its rapidly aging population are sources of concerns as well.
Yes, and that's where a lot of people see some other similarities as well, because during the beginning of the last 20 years, Japan was getting into the aging population problem. A lot of people believe that China is right now getting into the aging population problem. I don't particularly share that point of view. While their demographics are changing, theoretically, growth rate is a weighted average of the growth in labor force, growth in stock of capital, so basically investment, and changes in productivity. Now, in Japan's case, you had a very advanced economy, so their productivity growth was fairly low. China, because they haven't really caught up with the advanced economy yet, I think they can still maintain a fairly high growth rate, maybe not at 7 or 8%, but certainly at 4 or 5%, because they're still catching up to the advanced economies. So they will maintain, I think, a fairly healthy growth rate, even with the aging population, because they have so much to catch up with productivity.
Then, as we heard in the report, though, experts have said that if China's bubble bursts, then the consequences could be detrimental for the global economy as a whole.
Yes, because, well, China is effectively the second largest economy in the world, if you look at it as a country, and by some measures, they're already the largest economy in the world. But on the other hand, a lot of people, so as I mentioned before, BIS or Moody's are very concerned, but on the other hand, some other agencies or analysts believe that the problem, they're over worrying the problem because as far as the level of debt is concerned, the SOEs do have a very high level of debt, but it's owed to the government, not to the private sector.
Right.
So if the government can just decide to extend the loans, then they could escape a lot of the problem right there. Now, as for the growth of debt through the real estate investment, China has introduced some reforms earlier this year, limiting the amount of credit growth, limiting the amount that the lenders can lend to people who want to invest in real estate. So that should slow down the growth of the debt. But sooner or later, they're all going to have to deal with the large amount of corporate debt, which is something like 168% of GDP.
Wow. And aside from those reforms, I mean, what is China doing? What are some of the other stuff that China is doing in response to its growing economic bubble? Okay,
well, I think they do recognize the need for reforms because they keep emphasizing all the time. But part of the problem, I think, is that because of the growth slowdown in the Chinese economy, they haven't been willing to really go at the growth of the debt problem. We have a similar problem in Korea. Because of the low growth, we want whatever growth that we can get, and some of that is driven through borrowing. So because the economy, Chinese economy seems to be doing somewhat better this year. The exports are going up. Maybe this will give them the some room to actually deal with some of the debt problem. They have been ignoring it a lot so far because they don't want to disrupt the economy while it's in a slowdown. But if the global economy is in recovery, then this might be a good time for them to actually go and reduce not only the increase, the speed of the debt, but also the level of the debt.
All right. Thank you so much for your insight today, Professor.
Thank you.
We could be seeing the end of Korea's worst bird flu outbreak, as no new cases have been reported in nearly 2 months. The outbreak that led to the culling of millions of chickens and ducks late last year registered its last known case on April 4th in Nonsan of Chungcheongnam-do province. Likewise, the last known case of foot and mouth disease was logged back in the first 2 weeks of February. As a result, the Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs will wind down its special prevention measures tomorrow, and it will drop down its warnings level by 2 notches to the lowest starting from Thursday. Smartphone banking is slowly rising in the world of internet banking, accounting for over 60% of all online transactions in the first quarter. According to the Bank of Korea, there was an average of 94 million web banking transactions daily, nearly 6% higher than the previous quarter. Of those, 57 million occurred on smartphones, and a rise of over 7%. Daily smartphone banking transactions amounted to over $3.2 billion in value. The number of internet and smartphone banking users overall topped 125 million, up 2.3%, but the total amount sent through online fell 4.6%. More return-hungry investors are cashing in on P2P, or peer-to-peer lending. As that personal loan market expands, the government has begun to enforce a guideline this week for the young industry growing at a fast pace. Our Eunice Kim has more.
From your favorite pub to a movie theater yet to be built, there are many businesses looking for cash posted online. A famous artist's work as collateral for a credit loan to real estate project financing. The investment options are many. The investor can select his or her lending amount based on the returns and payment date.
The interest rates are much higher than what banks are offering. From $300 to $500, it's also appealing that you can select a small amount to invest.
Interest rates in the 10% range are considered high yield for the individual investor, but for those borrowing, it's considered middle of the road. Which is why, although the sprouting online lending market is not protected by financial regulators, it's still registering consistently high growth, some 10 times in the past year, approaching 1 trillion won.
It's true that the P2P lending has opened up the market for mid-range interest rates. And with more competition, it's had a positive impact on society.
And in order to minimize the chance of attractive investment opportunities turning into money-losing nightmares, the Financial Services Commission this week began enforcing a guideline for peer-to-peer lending companies, which are not technically considered financial firms. It's requiring individual investors to limit their lending to 10 million won per year. That's about $8,900. And for the mediating companies to take that borrowed money and store it in a financial institution, such as a bank. It's also required to introduce a deposit management system.
Investors should exercise good judgment and consider the company's reliability and whether the profit on offer is reasonable. Otherwise, they could see losses.
Indeed, the delinquency rate of peer-to-peer loans is still relatively low, though it has climbed in recent months to 0.73%. As the country is still relatively new to the direct loans, lenders are urged to be prudent and vigilant. Eunice Kim, Business Daily.
Now, major retailers are seeing a rise in sales these days when it comes to products popular among male customers, as more men actively invest in things that satisfy their needs. So, what are some of their areas of interest? Our Lee Ju-young tells us more.
From Gundam and Dragon Ball to your favorite Marvel superheroes, this action figure shop X Monster is a playground for many Korean men who are willing to spend lavishly on their hobbies. One figurine here can fetch up to tens of thousands of dollars.
I like Iron Man figurines. There's that joy when you have a collection. I'd buy more if I could.
It shows my personality. When it comes to characters I like, I look up where I can go buy them.
The most popular section in this 500 square meter shop is the area housing Iron Man. X-Monster says more than half of its customers are men, mostly in their 20s and 30s, while regulars are those in their 40s.
Before, the people around me didn't share that collecting action figures was their hobby because others would think it's just a toy. But now, they're proud to tell people.
Over the years, Korean men have been loosening up their purse strings. According to Shinsegae department store, purchases made by male customers have been gradually increasing over the years, taking up about 33% as of April last year. Hyundai department store is also seeing a similar trend. Hana Financial Investment says annual spending by an average male customer at Hyundai was about $572 last year, almost 21% higher than that of female customers.
An increasing number of products and services are popping up to fulfill men's hidden desires and their needs for well-being, health, safety, entertainment, and new experiences. Depending on how well companies understand their needs, products and services will evolve and become increasingly specialized.
When it comes to staying fit, yoga is emerging as a popular workout for many men in the country. Yoga has largely been perceived as a form of training exclusively for women, but about a year and a half ago, Broga decided to offer classes for men as well.
At first, I felt really shy and wasn't sure it was for men. But I feel good doing it, and I think it's better for me than going to the gym.
A lot of people around me do yoga, and they told me about the benefits, so that's why I decided to give it a try. I come around 2 times a week, but I try my best to come more often.
Broga says it's seen as male members nearly double over the course of 18 months despite a pricier monthly fee compared to gyms. It has even attracted many living far away.
We're seeing more male members join, and we get a lot of inquiries. I definitely feel like they're more interested. There's not huge demand yet, but our male members tend to be even more enthusiastic than our female members.
In Korea, the men's cosmetics market has already been thriving for years, and these days, it's relatively older men in their 40s and 50s that are leading the growth. Major online malls have also seen a strong rise in this age group. 11th Street says about 41% of first quarter sales were driven by middle-aged men, while Coupang saw the number of their male customers surge about 88% in the first half of last year. This may be why web businesses that target older men are increasing in number. Take this online clothing store Middle Age, for example, for clients in their 50s and 60s. It says it receives about 100 internet orders daily and even takes some over the phone to help customers figure out their size and style.
처음에는 페도라 같은 거는 좀 부담스러워서 안 쓰실 줄 알고 아예 안 했었는데 요즘 저희 가장 인기 있는 품목 중 하나예요.
Another hot item are jeans. The store says customers tend to order about 5 to 6 pairs in one go.
When it comes to fashion for Korean fathers, a lot of them buy outfits for mountain hiking or suits and ties. Even if dads wanted to wear cool clothes, there's just not enough out on the market. They wouldn't know where to look either. But in other countries, there are fashion icons like Nick Wooster. I wanted to do something like that, so I started this business targeting middle-aged men.
An increasing number of older men are choosing to live alone, free from the financial burden of supporting a family. This is expected to further boost their spending in the future as they continuously strive for class. Lee Joo-young, Business Daily.
And that wraps it up for today. Thanks for watching. We'll be back tomorrow with more business news that matters to you. Until then, goodbye.